Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the afternoon session that I know you've all been waiting for. We're going to be discussing a climate-neutral, smart economy, Greentech, and it is my pleasure, it is my honour to be the moderator for this afternoon session. My name is Martin Porter. I'm Executive Chair, Brussels, of the University of Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership. And I'm delighted to be here as part of a collaboration that we are initiating with CER. And we will hear a little bit, I hope, about that as the afternoon goes on. And I hope it's the first of many such collaborations that we will be able to realize over coming years. The discussion we have today, let me introduce very briefly, because we've got a wonderful array of panelists here who are going to be able to give their perspectives on that. And then hopefully not just talk amongst ourselves, but give you a chance to put questions to them. The backdrop to this discussion, I think, is probably familiar to you, but let me just sketch it very briefly. I think you've probably, if you've been at the conference, heard from Janusz already about the urgency and severity of the ecological crisis and the responses that it requires. There is no time to lose. And indeed, we can see the political systems in Europe and elsewhere reacting to that. Discussion, certainly in Brussels, where I'm based, on a European Green Deal is symptomatic of the growing interest in this and its mainstream as part of economic discussions, no less. And indeed, much of the work that I do in Brussels is also connecting the political discussion to the role of businesses, to the role of others in society who need to help solve those problems. And I'm sure this panel is going to be a good representation of how we need to look at this through those different lenses to find the solutions. But whilst it's clearly an amazingly urgent and significant transition that we will have to realize in the space of a mere generation, 30 years is the time frame that we need to be able to succeed in this, it's also clear that there are a great number of opportunities that come from that, and that we need to think about the benefits, the opportunities, whether for business, citizens, employees or others that come from this transition. And we are going to try and look at those and explore those today from different perspectives. We will begin with a perspective from the CER. We'll then hear from somebody working in the food industry and restaurant business, how she sees these issues. We'll then hear from the world of public policy, both a very global perspective and then one much more focused on a specific national perspective. And then three perspectives from business, people at the so-called coalface, at the front end of the response to this, who have to digest and make a success of this challenge every day in their businesses, which gives us a great perspective, I think, to draw on. So with no further ado, perhaps I can just briefly run through the panelists that you have here before you. I hope, have all got information packs which give you, more background information on most of them. But allow me, if I can get the order right here, I think I can. On my far right and your far left, we have Rok Vodnik, a member of the board of Petrol. To his left, we have Janusz Potočnik, who I think probably needs no further introduction for anyone in Slovenia, and indeed somebody with whom I have had the pleasure of working in the past as well. So Janusz, welcome to you as well. To his left, we have Gregor Benčina. I hope I've pronounced that correctly, Gregor, who is the president of the Slovinalies Group and vice president of CER. To my right, we have His Excellency Monsieur Bernard Foutrier from Monaco. Welcome to you as well. To my immediate left, we have Tom Fuchs from the CEO of Toyota Mobility in Europe. To his left, we have Anna Roche, the CEO of Hisha Franco, somebody I presume many of you are familiar with from her excellent restaurant and cuisine that you may have had the good fortune to sample yourselves. Welcome to you as well. And to our far left, we have the one last panelist, Dr. Sasha Bavek who is the Managing Director of the Systems Division and on the Executive Committee of Knauf Insulation, a company I'm sure you will also know well. So, welcome to all of you. Thank you. We look forward to your different presentations, and we will begin, I think, with Gregor. You're welcome to stay here, or indeed go to the lectern, and welcome.
I think I will take the floor just over there, because we can go faster through some slides.
Indeed.
So, dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this afternoon session. I know it's one of the hardest timing, you know, after the lunch is always very hard, but let's warm up the discussion with some of the main issues, if this will work. Like, Mr. Patochnik had some problems yesterday.
Yes, it's okay. But I can see also.
Really? What is supposed to be?
Yeah.
Can maybe somebody from the back forward the slides?
Even though the clock is ticking, I'll make sure you have time to finish your presentation. So.
7 minutes is 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, but he will try to do his best, and I will just say that without any doubt, the climate crisis is undoubtedly here. We can see this practically every day over the news. Rising temperatures, fires more or less in different continents from day to day. We can see that ice is melting, you know, and as a consequence, water level is rising. We can see some floods all around the globe, and these are the things which we should be concerned on. I'm not here the right person who will tell what we need to do. I just try to show you that the climate crisis can be as well an opportunity for all of us. That we will not be just driven by the fear what climate crisis is bringing, but by the motivation what climate crisis can be as opportunity to us. So of course there are some political goals. Different countries, different goals. Carbon-free 2035 from the most optimistic, 2040, 2050, depending who we count on. But basically we can all agree that we are in the corporation world, we are facing two major trends, or two mega trends. First is digitalization, and the second one is sustainability. Both of them can bring a lot of competitive advantages to the states, countries, corporations, companies, family businesses, and others. And when I say that climate crisis can be opportunity for a country, for example, I'm sure that new alliances are building up on the issues of climate crisis and sustainability. I'm sure that with something like green taxes, countries can benefit. Traditionally, we knew taxes on labor and taxes on capital, and nobody likes them. But when we have the option to introduce green taxes, where we have the choice to buy a plastic bag or not, or to refuel the car, or to buy a new car which consumes a bit less, or his electric mobility. So these are then the issues which can bring. So, like we said, through the picture, I will just try to catch me. So these are all the potentials countries are having. On the other side, there is the climate crisis is a big opportunity for corporations. You know, just coming back to the countries, this is one of the map who is polluting our globe. On the other side, there is I would say, a bright future for corporations. There can be new products and services. There will be new business models. There will be new jobs created. I mean, completely new paradigm will form a new society. We will not discuss about, like we discussed before, about cars. We will discuss about mobility. We will not discuss about the items, but how to fulfill our needs. And here it comes the buzzword Greentech. And what is Greentech? Greentech is something, it's a part of course, it's part of economy. economy which is based on knowledge and technology and which does not harm globally, so sustainability which does not harm the world. So all these organizations, movements, activities are currently going on in the world under the buzzword Greentech. Of course, some of them as well in this part of the world, in Slovenia and in the region, some of them already globally. And when I say that Greentech is opportunity for Slovenia, I can proudly say that as well Slovenian companies, few of them are already among the global leaders in the industries. I just tried to name a couple of them which we visited today and yesterday and are coming from Slovenia. And they're connected with e-mobility or e-boating, e-planes, and electric houses. For example, and these are practically pioneers in their world. How I will justify that I said they are pioneers? There was a survey, what is the percentage of renewable energy used in different companies? And we can see Apple, 83% of the whole energy, what they use comes from renewable energy. And we know that the companies like Facebook and Google are not manufacturers. They are just service providers having a big IT platforms. But you know, I will just move forward. Heloica is a manufacturer, but it's based on 100% of renewable energy, which is produced on the field where the factory stands. So the energy comes from solar, from hydro, and from wood. So, and in this sense, there are some leaders on the market. So like I said, that company, which basically is part of our group, is producing energy-efficient houses, basically active houses, so the houses do not consume any energy except the ones which they produce, are produced in the factory, which runs on the same principle, so that all the machinery and all the things which are running company are run based on the solar, hydro, and wooden energy. So with that, I just wanted to show you some examples and to leave you with the thoughts, what kind of challenges are in our environment. Of course, we saw some moves in the energy sector from the traditional coal-run power plants. We saw movement in the last 10 years basically towards solar and wind. A huge shift is currently made in the mobility sector, not only by cars, but as well the e-bikes and scooters and all kinds of devices. And I think we are still in front of something what's really big, and that's self-driven mobility, which will be later on, I'm quite sure, touched by Mr. Tom Fuchs from Toyota. There is a big shift expected in the construction, manufacturing. Everybody would like to produce the things more ecological friendly. And not because it's healthy, but because it's more profitable. There is a big shift going on in the sectors like medicine, biotech. And of course, as having Anna Roche today here, there is a big shift as well in the food sector. I will touch as well the sector which has nothing to do basically with the sustainability, but it does. There are different funds, different fundraising in the green segments. So, and as I said, food, local food, and but I'm sure we will hear in a few minutes more about it. My point would be opportunities are here, and which we will take with us, it's upon us. So, and just the last remarks. Green used to be as an alternative. Today, I think we should see a green orientation as a mainstream. And not speaking about, you know, sustainability, it's a global issue. That means it does not concern me. When it's a global issue, it concerns to all of us and each of us. And I don't think that we should take climate crisis not only as a crisis, but not only as a problem, but as a big opportunity. And the one who will see this opportunity, he or she will create a big competitive advantage against others. So I will leave you with my thoughts, and I'm sure that in the next couple of minutes we'll hear much more about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gregor. Maybe while you're sitting down, if I could ask you for one other comment, to enlighten our guests about the Memorandum of Understanding that the Centre of Energy Efficient Solutions signed at lunchtime, because I think that would be worth introducing now. Do you want to press the right?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning this. So it was our honor of the Center of Energy Efficiency that today we signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the Prince Albert Foundation and its CEO, Mr. Fouterier, which recognize that the activities which we started a few years ago in the CER are the right ones, and they're bringing additional hope to what we are doing, and there opens additional horizons in the scene of sustainability and climate change. So I'm really thankful for that, for this move from the Prince Albert Foundation.
And we may hear a little more about that in a second, I guess. So with that, though, Anna, can we invite you to either take the stage or just make your comments here, as you prefer?
I'll take the stage.
Okay, thank you.
Hi to everyone. I would first ask Manza, my assistant, to come over to take over this one, because I'm not so much multitask to be able to multitask. Well, thank you so much. Okay, you just go, and you know what? You listen to me and observe what you have to see. I haven't prepared my speech, I never do, because I'm always speaking from the heart and from the experience, and I honestly think that this is the reason why I'm invited here. So let me introduce myself. My name is Anna Roche. I actually studied international science and diplomacy, graduated in university in Trieste, but I'm a chef. I work in Hisza Franco, in probably the most far-away corner of Slovenia, the greenest because we have no highways, or even trains or airplanes reaching us. Well, the measure of how green I am, I have a dog here around. He's probably the only dog attending the Bled Strategic Forum. So I guess the reason I'm here is the way we work in Hisza Franco and the way we actually organize our ingredients, our farmers around us. Maybe two important notes. One is last year I have been contacted 2 times by United Nations, by actually 2 different services asking me for help, because they are trying to involve chefs all around the world that they understand as role models for not only climate change, but for the hunger that the world is facing, probably also due to the climate change. Apparently, the numbers are really incredible. We are apparently focusing the hunger by the best numbers in 15 years. And I would like to give you an example through which I think we maybe can avoid it. I don't know if there is time, but maybe there is time for our grandchildren. And I will give you the reason why I don't think we should become vegetarians. So in the last interviews, and I'm giving really a lot of them, like in the year 2017, 515 of them, last year 400. But the last ones have been all about making me say we all should be vegetarians. And I completely disagree. And I will explain you why, and I will also give you the reason why I think we should be thinking about micro-regions and not generalizing a problem. So when I started cooking, and that was 15 years ago, in the remote Kobarid, completely self-taught, I actually had to find ingredients. Since Kobarid is so far away from everything, the suppliers had troubles to reach us. So if I wanted to have, I don't know, a lamb, a trout, or a fish, I actually needed to convince the suppliers to send me things by bus, since we were so far away and we were the only restaurant operating on that level, or maybe ambitious to be at that level. Of course, nobody would sit in the car and drive 2.5 hours just to supply you, I don't know, 200 euro supply and that makes like 4-hour driving. This particular situation, and maybe a little bit my being stubborn and really believing that a chef, a good chef, is the ambassador of his land and is not generalizing the kitchen and not remaking the kitchen of Barcelona, New York, or London, made me knock on the doors of our farmers, our, I don't know, even people with gardens, people who I knew were foraging in free time. And I honestly think that in the 15 years of my dedication to the kitchen, my biggest success was not the best female chef crown that I got in 2017, but was a chain of producers that Hisha Franco has built around herself. And I explain you why this is a win-win situation. If you step on the top of a mountain, 1,000 meters is enough. You can see the Gulf of Trieste. You can see the rivers, you can see the meadows, you can see the mountains. All is the place of our suppliers. So we have been through a very long educational period when, I don't know, I knocked on the door of someone who had lamps in Dreznica, and I was like, hey, I know you have lamps, would you share some lamps with us? And he would be like, well, I could share a lamp with you, but like I'm not really sure if my lamp is good enough for you. And then facing maybe a client who would say to you, but this lamp doesn't have a flavor of the lamp from New Zealand. And the same was with every single ingredient we've been sourcing locally and convincing farmers to extend a little bit their production to share it with us. The result 15 years later is that Hisha Franco is having 100% local supply, which means we have products which have not been traveling, which have never taken airplanes or boats, that have not been harvested unripe or green, but have been picked that particular moment. That also means a big respect for the nature, because let's say my forager would say to me, give me the exact number of plants you need. So it doesn't say, this doesn't mean like 2 buckets of sunchoke flowers, but it means precisely 112 pieces of sunchoke flowers. Hisha Franco consecutively last year went on one single menu, which means that if you come to our house, you cannot, there is no democracy. I decide what you eat, I'm sorry, which means completely no waste. We have a little compost on the back of the garden, actually 2, which is one of our green aspects. And there is actually not really a lot to add on it. There is another even more important aspect. It is that by working with local community, we are creating an economical circle. It's a win-win situation. I have the freshest original product that has never traveled, but I leave the money in the local community. And there is a social aspect as well, and that's maybe the one which is the most important one, which is when I was a child and when I was in high school and when I was a student, you know, a farmer was not really something to be proud of. Like, I remember I was in high school in Tolmin, in gymnasium, and like my friends who were coming from farms were often even not invited to the parties because it was a kind of a lower class. Today, or maybe example of my son last year, he finished primary school and he went on stage explaining to 300 people, because every child needed to explain what he's going to be in his life. And he proudly said, hey, I'm going to be a farmer. So there was a silence, and then like the whole auditorium starting applauding. Can you understand a big move? A big move that Hisha Franco probably helped create in the area where we are proud of what we are doing in a local community, where a story that can be completely lost and nobody could really believe in became a world story. Hisha Franco last year was on the place 38 on the world restaurant list, which at the same time mean that's a place not only of me, but of all the farmers and everyone else. Now, the reason why I think we should never be vegetarians, it's because I honestly think, can you imagine what happens if we all become vegetarians? Who is going to produce all the vegetables for us? Where are we going to find enough land to produce them? And the last question, are we going to empty the forest? When we forage with the heart and with the knowledge that we have to maintain the forest for next year, for in 10-year time, but also for next generations. And I've been last year invited to a vegan meal, and with the purpose to convince me we all have to change our eating habits because, you know, of the extensive farming and all the rest. But then at the end of the day, in the month of January, I had red bell peppers and Chinese mushrooms on the table. So I'm asking myself, who is damaging more this planet? And my answer is, why don't we look to the micro regions of our planet, where maybe Hisha Franco and Socha Valley can be an amazing example of how people have always been living, super healthy, never over, like taking too much from the nature outside. We are based on dairy products. We are based on what nature is giving us. We are natural foragers. We all have gardens. We eat what the nature in that moment is giving us. So we are completely territorial and we are completely seasonal. But we also don't eat really a lot of meat. But I'm not vegetarian. Like in the old times in the Socha Valley, people have been eating, having a cow, and they've been milking a cow until a cow was giving a milk. When the cow was 14 years old, by the way, in the Socha Valley, the cows have this amazing long life of 14.5 years in general, compared to 2.5 in the world. Then was the time to finally eat the meat. So the meat was, in a way, a festivity. But we needed meat, so we were eating meat. So I think respecting and knowing the traditions, knowing how people were treating the nature in the past would maybe give us the answers for the future. In Hisha Franco, we are really respecting it. In my team, we are 16 people, only in the kitchen, coming from all around the world. We are 15 different nationalities. My head chef is Leonardo Fonseca, he's Colombian, he's here. But all of them adapted to the system of life of the Socha Valley. And I don't think there is another reason to reconsider this. Why eating cherries and strawberries in the winter when we have amazing sauerkraut or apples? Thank you so much.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, I think your passion and your success obviously shines through from that wonderful story. You're provocative as well, which is great, and I'm sure we'll come back to maybe questions in due course. But now let's change the discussion a little, and we'll pass to Janos, to hear about the sort of global scale of this question, rather than the very community, local perspective that we've just heard from. So, Janos, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Martin. Good day to everybody. It's great to speak after Anna, but even greater because I was 3 days ago having a lunch in her restaurant. So, yeah. I was asked to explain in 7 minutes what are the challenges of public policy making when it's connected to the climate change and also to the other environmental issues. There will be some slides which I have already shown yesterday, so I will briefly go through, and some which I will explain more in detail. So I assume that you have been listening yesterday. So, as mentioned yesterday, we are for the first time living in a single tightly coupled human socio-ecological system of planetary scope. So for the first time, we are sharing the planet and the responsibility for the planet seriously, which means that our individual and collective responsibility has enormously increased. The most important thing when it comes to the policy connected to the climate change, it's actually on this slide. We are all focusing on climate change, on biodiversity loss, on pollution, but in essence, these are the consequences. These are the results of something. These are the results of the pressures and drivers. And whenever you say pressure and driver, you say humans and human activity, actually economics. So it is essential to understand that also. That is why the International Resource Panel is doing the work where we try to build a bridge between economics and the consequences which goes through the resource use. So why is that important? Because policies are different. And today I will try to explain you some policies are actually still quite missing. So economy, focus on economy, focus on what we are doing, because without that change, and that's why we have all the people around today here, which are telling us the story, how it's important to do the job in its own house. So decoupling concept, which I explained yesterday, yeah, we are not against continuing improving the well-being, even the growth, even if I would absolutely prefer not to be measured in GDP because it's a mistake. But we have to decouple that from the resources and from environmental impact. And circular economy, it's actually a model which is today becoming a global trend, which is telling us how we can do the things differently, how we can use the resources in the production and consumption for a longer time and keep its value as high as possible. That's in one sentence what circular economy is actually bringing. So I will give you 3 examples of how these things could be actually useful. The first one is connected to the thing which I already mentioned yesterday. Yes, energy system is fundamental. And if we don't change energy system because it's a fuel to all economy, we will have major problem. That's why I'm a believer that the answers do lie very much in the energy system. But if you do not combine the answers which do lie in the energy system with the answers which are connected with food management, with the mobility systems, with how we produce our houses, so with decoupling of land, water, and materials from the economic growth, we will not do the trick. So there are actually 3 pillars of efficient climate policy. The first one are supply-side solutions, the one on which we are more or less working, energy carbon management. The second one are demand-side solutions, circular economy, land, water, materials management, and decoupling. We are not doing a lot on that yet. And the third one are nature-based solutions, ecosystem services, environmental things. Again, we are not working enough on that area. So we too much focus our policy on the orange part of the slide. Just to give you 3 examples from the demand-side solutions, how the things could improve our... So we have recently done the calculation. In the first pillar, then, on the left, where you have the figure 530, this is already all the energy policies included. The rest was the calculation if we would, in all those systems which I mentioned, switch from linear system to circular system. And the result was that in steel, plastic, aluminum, and cement, we can actually cut CO2 emissions for 56% by switching the system of the demand side. Or the second, the structural waste on mobility, which I have explained yesterday already quite in detail. So the current car today, it's used 2%. If we would only shift from the individual ownership to shared mobility, we can cut emissions for 70%, total cost of ownership for 77%, and externalities and cost to society for 74%. These are convincing figures. And of course, whenever we talk about mobility, it's not only electrification of the car. You always have to look to those questions in a holistic way. The whole mobility system needs to be taken into account, and the right alternatives need to be provided to the people. So we will never change behavior, but we need mobility. We don't need car. Remember that. And the last, it's maybe slightly connecting to the things which Anna was talking about, but a bit from another side. You know that pesticides are one of the major problems today in agriculture. And when we started to go in the direction of precision farming, that was starting to using digitalization, which was also mentioned before. I think it was a major step already, because you can use much less pesticides. But until you have that kind of model, the producer of pesticides is still making profit from selling you as much of pesticides as possible. But imagine for a second the situation that you would actually shift, so that the producer of the pesticides would not sell you the pesticides, but the service of protecting a hectare of your field. In that moment, pesticides becomes his cost, and you shift entirely the logic. So I think it's important to start thinking in different ways how we can incentivize and make profits in a different way, because this is actually the essence of the logic of the circular economy. Finally, just quickly running through on what levels the things could be done. Cities and the reasons why they are important. First, because they have relative autonomy. That means that even if they have no rules from the government and the world, they can do a lot. Because if a mayor is smart and open-minded, a lot could be done. Why? Because a lot of the problems are actually concentrated on the city's level. Second, national level, if I would be asked from the European Commission side, there is one thing which I would immediately propose, that all member states inside the semester logic on the European Union level would prepare circular economy roadmaps or even better action plans. Why? Because action plans put dates and put obligations behind. Third, if we look to European Union, circular economy should be a clear priority of the next European Commission. Then we should establish credible, mutually reinforcing link between circular economy, SDGs, and competitiveness. This is certainly not now yet present enough. Then build new coalitions for circular economy change, coalitions with climate change, which is in the center of our attention today, bioeconomy, health, digital transformation, regional policy, research, innovation, and so on. So it's not about environment, and it's not about economy itself. It's about changing economic system, which touches all the areas which policymakers should work on. Then continue working on plastics, but also add product groups beyond the plastics, for example, textile food, into future circular economy programs, improve the extended producer responsibility, eco-design, to deliver the whole potential, focus on economic signals and drivers, taxes, subsidies, public procurement. They are in the hands of the national authorities, but they are pretty much the essence of the game. Until the signals are sending producers in the wrong direction, we will have wrong results. And currently, natural capital is not valued at all. And that's the major problem. Uppsala. And finally, continue working on data reporting and on greening the financing, focus on the retaining value in the circular economy process and social aspects of the circular economy transition. At the global level, again, exploit the possibilities of linking circular economy to already existing international initiatives, conventions, in particular climate change and biodiversity loss, bring closer the science policy interface bodies, IPPC, IPBS, IRP, which I'm co-chairing, and broaden the coalition of UN bodies around the circular economy. Now it's more or less UNEP, but let's connect with WHO, UNDP, UNIDO, UNCTAD, which would be the first logical choices. And let's move from environmental attention, which is on a global level, still giving the climate change, to the high-level political forum, which connects social, economic, and environment, and of course, to the issues which are dealt on the General Assembly level. So that's practically the same conclusion which I have more or less done yesterday, why the changes are so difficult. I do consider these three as a major thing, and I will repeat them because it's important that you understand them. And majority of our public institutions, including private, but majority of public institutions are short-term minded, while the changes are long-term. And unfortunately, with all the systems which we have created, somehow we cannot address the 21st century challenges. And this is really the question even of how democracies work. And we will seriously have to consider how to inbuild in our policy making. The second, production and consumption systems are still too much based on the logic of consumerism fueled by the quantity-driven profits and growth measured by GDP. GDP could be best explained by saying that one will not reach the goal by walking faster if walking in the wrong direction, so we have to fix a broken compass. We have a problem there. And finally, transition is only possible to a more sustainable economy and society if it's just fair and inclusive. A lot of people have invested in the past in good faith. They will resist the change if we don't help them, that they actually change. And broadly speaking, we have to make our societies more equitable, and we have to do more in fight against the poverty. The final slide, which is a typical debate on in particular on EU level, more or less regulation. You know, ask them, but I know the answer. They are not against regulation. What they need is fairness. They are against free riders. They are against uncertainty and risk, and they need a level playing field. That's what business needs. But regulation and the role of public authorities is essential and necessary. And public authorities have to play their role, or we will all collectively fail. Thank you.
Thank you, Janos. Well, a very clear agenda for change there, and I hope you're being heard in the European Commission and elsewhere, as it's just developing its own Green New Deal, or European Green Deal. We'll come back to your questions, and I'm sure the representatives here from different companies will maybe touch on the role of public policy and regulation in that. But maybe taking the global perspective and applying it very much in a specific geography is now where we can turn to you, Your Excellency. So.
Thank you. I will speak from here.
course,
I don't
yes.
have any slide of presentation, and that will
And
allow me to stick to the timer. Okay. And sorry if my comments will duplicate some of what is done just before, but I think that it is still useful to repeat things to be convinced. I think the action against climate change means first and foremost achieving a successful energy transition. That has been recalled yesterday in various sessions, and I'm thinking also about what has been told by Professor Sachs, which is absolutely need to escape from a carbonated system. This is, of course, an extremely broad and complex task, since energy, and we saw with each industrial revolution, largely determines our organization and representations. The transition toward clean energy is not just about replacing a source of energy by another, coal-fired plants by solar plants. It means, first of all, to be more efficient, and it involves also changing many aspects of our worlds. That's, I think, it makes it such a complex task, but also, in a certain way, such a source of hope. I think we can consider at least three key issues at play in the energy transition: a technological one, a political one, and also a cultural one. For which regards the technological issue first, we have, let's say, several success stories to date. The accelerated development of renewable energy production, and it's considered that we have already something like 2 terawatts of installed renewable energy power worldwide, shared more or less mainly between wind energy and solar one. Production has increased very big factor 4 since 2010, factor 65 since 2000. And it's estimated that we will have reached the 2nd terawatt of solar energy and wind energy by themselves on 2023. We have already seen the benefits of this energy in very concrete terms, such as in housing, urban plannings. Thanks to solution, we try also to test in Monaco by developing on each building as far as possible solar energy, but also by promoting some specific renewable system like ocean thermal heat pump and geothermal energy, which provide us close to 20% of our energy need on the territory. We also have seen some emblematic success story in the mobility sector. Maybe some, let's say, iconic example like development or promotion of Formula E race, or let's say some Monte Carlo E rally, but also some adventurous example in the air. I'm thinking about what has been done by Bertrand Piccard 2 years ago with the Solar Impulse around the world plane without using any drop of fuel. That's an example that proves that energy transition can bring to appropriate solution in the future, but also now in the mobility. And I had the opportunity this morning to visit a factory which produces electric boat here in Slovenia, which is also a fantastic progress if we consider the level of, let's say, air pollution and also greenhouse gas emission, which is coming from navigation. So these examples have helped mass movement with an increasing number, to go back to cars, of electric cars on roads around the world. There are currently over 2 million of them, and more than 3 million even if we had charging hybrids. And the registration of electric cars have increased from approximately 60% between 27 and 2018. But we must consider that despite this growth, this energy, these cars are still in a minority. We globally have, let's say, something which must be 2% of the total park. In Monaco, we are privileged, less than in Norway, but we have overpassed the rate of 5% of electric cars registered that was in the spring. Much more needs to be done at a much faster rate, and for this it's clear we are strongly pushed by a young generation. That's why I think the second issue comes into play in that the need to political deciders to act more concretely on this. It's a question of promoting the early deployment of new energy sources, which is alone capable to mitigating and to change the deal regarding climate change. This is what we try to do, we must do by supporting, let's say, supporting by the political decider technical solution, by hearing more precisely what science told to politicians, and that is still a concern. There is a gap between what science told us regarding climate change and what politicians transmit in a concrete decision. We try to do it at our level in Monaco. We are strongly supporting the work which is done by IPCC. We will host in some weeks in Monaco a special session of IPCC dedicated to question of impact of climate change on oceans. And I think it's important. Once more, locally, we try strongly to develop electric mobility. We have a set of system of financial incentive, of technical modalities by having a dense grid of plugging charging system in Monaco. And also there is a need to, let's say, to support events focused on this issue, because it's really a matter of convincing political leaders and also economic sector and above all public opinion. This brings me to the first and last issue, which is a cultural change brought about by the energy transition. It's a very profound change, and one of which holds so much potential, a change we need to encourage, but which we also need to organize. It's also linked to digital development, which will enable us to allocate energy more accurately, but we must also be cautious about, let's say, the danger of increasing consumption of energy by data system. This also entails a change in energy productions, which will be more obviously decentralized. And okay, once more, we must be confident that this cultural change, which is strongly pushed by your generation, could bring us to go ahead in a good conditions, to measure the impact that young people will to channel is to make it more useful and more effective, and to build on this energy to speed up the energy of the youth, to speed up the energy transition, which is absolutely compulsory.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. I mean, you mentioned on a number of occasions energy there, and I think that's the perfect way to introduce Rock to consider the transition, if you want, to a climate-neutral energy system from where we are now. Rock, I think you have a presentation, so you're exactly.
Yes, thank you. My focus is going to be on the energy sector, because I'm daily involved in this, working for Petrol, one of the largest energy companies in the region, making currently the transition into new energy, into renewables, into sustainable energy, and it's a task, it's a big challenge for us, coming from oil and gas distribution today. So in this short presentation, I would like to speak not so much about the regulations and the regulators, which is usually popular matter in the discussion in the energy sector, but more about the opportunities and changes that are going on in the private and business sector on one side, and with the customers and society on the other side. So there's no questions, shall we need to act to decrease the greenhouse gases, which is the amount of greenhouse gases at that moment is the highest in the last 800,000 years and significantly affect our lives worldwide. So just for example, year 2017 was the costliest year for the insurance for the weather disasters. It costs $132 billion worldwide, not to count the costs due to the population health impacts. The only question truly is how we can do it. And it's true, nowadays we are facing the reallocation of tens of trillions dollars, euros towards green investments, reshaping cities and the energy systems around the world. That offers, on one side, huge opportunities for the technological development and opening so-called new green jobs. So according to statistics in UK, there are today more than 500,000 jobs in the so-called low-carbon business. And for example, Greentech's reform in Germany created additional 250,000 new jobs. More or less, we are all aware of the power production from the renewables. Nowadays, it's becoming more and more competitive against the conventional production, and this is mainly due to the technological improvement, the efficiency of new technologies. So today, we can follow new wind, solar projects development worldwide. Of course, on the other side, again, the technology will need to address the challenge of the power storage, batteries, power conversion into hydrogen or something else to really enable the renewable power production to replace conventional one even more. But in the past, there was less discussion about the energy efficiency, or better to say, how we can use energy in more efficient way. It's perhaps even the most important segment. And this segment can solely bring 40 to 50% of greenhouse gases decrease. So without it, we will not be able really to achieve our goals. On one side, this segment consists of customer behavior, and it's linked to cultural and social changes. And it depends how we understand the energy, how we are going to use it, the awareness about it, how we are going to change our habits in our daily life using the energy. The other part is technology. Important part, how we are going to adopt it, how we are going to use it. And it will affect our lives, it will affect cities, it will affect public sectors, industry, and us as individuals. So very important part, and without the new technologies, we will not able to achieve our goals. So technology, innovation, digitalization are moving towards decentralization of the energy sector. This is something that is going on today. Consumers are truly becoming or will be becoming prosumers. So it means it will not only consume the energy, but they will also produce the energy. And that will significantly change their relation with the energy. So solar panels, batteries, electric vehicles, heat pumps, and others integrated with the smart energy systems will help prosumers to be an efficient part of energy systems and will strongly participate in efficient energy usage. AI, big data, machine learning will only bring this into the higher level and to more successful integration into other systems. The prosumers will be involved in new business models, in new energy systems, such as demand-side response, aggregated virtual power plant, power-to-heat systems, and I believe many others which will develop along the way. And this will not only decrease their power consumption, but they will also benefit out of this. Yeah, it's true. They will earn even some money participating with their capacities in the energy system. And that's for sure, it's going to be big incentive to achieve these changes faster. All this offers, beside the direct effect on the environment and economical benefits, are huge opportunities for the development further new technologies, to develop new knowledge, to create a new high value added jobs, and that all will multiply the benefits. At the end, the question, what will be, in fact, the role of the system operators, what will be the role of the regulators? It's difficult to expect that they will push very much into these changes, but they will need to follow. Question is, will they be fast or slow followers? We will see this in the future, but I'm sure the technological development will be moving faster and faster also in the future, also in this segment. Thank you.
Thank you, Rock. And you talked a lot about the opportunity there and all of the technology solutions, the way in which businesses and consumers will change. I'm sure that when we've heard from your two colleagues as well, we should come back and link that to the questions Janusz raised in particular, so the role of public policy. What would you see accelerating those changes so that they're taken up more rapidly, more effectively for the Slovenian economy and elsewhere? Because I think joining those two equations is going to be important. But we'll come back to that maybe in questions. Tom, I think the floor is now yours. So look forward to hearing what you have to say about electrification, zero emissions vehicles, and the system for mobility that we will need.
Good afternoon, everybody. Let me try to tell you something about Toyota's approach to green tech and especially to electrification here in Europe. But let me start with Toyota Environmental Challenge 2050. We want to achieve zero emission, not only with driving our cars, but also in full life cycle of our cars and also in our factories when we produce our cars. At the same time, we want to reduce and optimize water usage, develop recycling society, and develop and contribute to society in harmony with nature. But this environmental challenge is a pretty recent one. It was developed in 2015. What I'm showing you here is a slide of early 1990, which means almost 30 years ago, when we decided that the car for 21st century should be different and it's unsustainable to continue to produce the same cars. We put ourselves a challenge to develop a sustainable mobility with three goals of energy diversity, CO2 reduction, and air quality. And we have seen, regardless of technology, going from internal combustion engine, gasoline and diesel, up to hydrogen, we have seen that hybrid technology will be the core in the development of all these technologies. Actually, this strategy resulted into introduction of first mass-produced hybrid vehicle, which was Prius first generation in 1997. So when we see hybrid, why we believe it's a core? When we look at the hybrid, it's basically internal combustion engine combined with electric motor and batteries. But if we add a bit of battery capacity and a plug, we come to a plug-in hybrid. If we remove internal combustion engine and add additional battery capacity, we come to electric vehicle. Or if we simply replace the internal combustion engine with fuel cell stack, we come to fuel cell vehicle. So what did we achieve in these 25 years since we introduced Prius? We have reached last year 12 million vehicles. Actually, I've checked just data yesterday. We are already at the 14 million hybrid vehicles sold. This contributed to 93 million tons CO2 reduction, or if I'm more specific, it's like planting 7.4 billion additional trees on the planet. And looking at the same story here in Europe, we have introduced the first hybrid vehicle in year 2000. These are now yearly data. Last year, we sold 480,000 hybrids. This year, we will pass the mark of 500,000 hybrids per year sold. And actually, our mix today in West Europe is more than 60% of all our cars sold are hybrids. And if you look below, even at our smallest car, Yaris, the mix, when we give a choice to people to drive ecologically acceptable vehicle, more than 50% of both vehicles are today with hybrid. In bigger cars, it goes even beyond 80%. And hybrid brings also tangible benefits. We have equipped, we have equipped our test vehicles in Europe with telematic device. And we have accumulated now almost 1 million test drives, which did 17 million test kilometers. And these cars are driven by our customers, partly on a highway, partly in the city, and by the people who don't know actually how to drive hybrid. And the average result is that more than 50% of the time, the internal combustion engine is switched off, so the car does not emit any CO2. But then we try to put the same telematics device into taxi vehicle in Germany, where the cars are mainly used in city environment and by drivers who know how to drive hybrid, and the results come up to 70% of the time the car has the engine switched off. What will be the future? The future will be zero-emission vehicles, and it will be two technologies: battery electric vehicles and fuel cell electric vehicles powered by hydrogen. Depend of the usage will be based on the vehicle size and traveling distance. Heavier vehicles, longer distances, there will be more smart to use the fuel cell as a solution, because very simple analogy, in order to travel 500 kilometers today with electric, you need 450 kilos of batteries. In order to travel 500 kilometers with hydrogen-powered car, you need just 5 kilos of hydrogen. But we believe that also for the foreseeable future, the hybrid electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles will represent a natural bridge between these two technologies. So how far did we come from Toyota? We have decided in 2015 to launch the first mass-produced hydrogen vehicle in the world, Mirai. We have already sold more than 8,000 units globally. Out of this, almost 500 in Europe. We are expanding this technology into other vehicles. We are building hydrogen forklifts. We are building hydrogen buses, where we combine the current technology. We add 10 tanks of Mirai, 2 units of fuel cell stack of Mirai, 4 units of battery from Camry, and 2 motors from Lexus RX, which means we don't need to completely redevelop the new bus in order to introduce the bus. But we have entered also the trucking business. We are producing the first hydrogen trucks, and these trucks have currently 300 kilometers range. From electric point of view, we will start next year battery electric vehicles rollout. We are committed to offer in Europe every vehicle which will be electrified, and then by 2030, we will globally sell 5.5 million units electrified vehicles. Out of this, 1 million units with zero CO2 emission, either battery electric vehicles or fuel cell electric vehicles. What is important for the future, that Toyota will keep its environmental leadership, will keep technologically neutral approach, so we will develop all technologies to reduce our CO2. But what's the most important, we want to bring the right car at the right time and at the right place for our customer to choose. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. And again, a great exposition of not just success, but I think the opportunity that still rests in front of us, certainly for Toyota. And maybe we'll come back to this in a session, just linking to what Bernard and Janusz also mentioned. How will you look at the way we demand services rather than products necessarily, the cultural shift and the service shift from a company perspective? How will that affect the way that you run your business in due course? But before we come to that, we have another presentation. This is from Sasha, and he's going to talk to us about obviously the role of insulation, but also how we live in homes and how we can be, I presume, energy efficient and healthy from that approach. Sasha.
Hello, good afternoon. Sorry for my broken voice. I spent 2 days in a country where still smoke a lot in the closed places, so that's the result. But I hope you will not have too much trouble to hear me. I will speak about our story, how we move from a green business, which was green just by the color, to something what Gregor was explaining very much about the green in terms of Greentech, and how this is something which is linking together sustainable aspects, fighting the climate change, digitalization, technology, and I would say a big business opportunity. And this is something what can be interesting maybe also for this environment here in Slovenia. So I speak about evolution of green roofs, which moved from a static element to a real performance element, which is addressing all these things which we are listening today more or less the whole day. If you look, the first green roofs were in principle the gardens of Babylon. That's where things started. And if you look, this is probably a few thousand years before Christ. And this is the vision of Paris, I think 2050, where it's again a lot of green gardens, and all these things has to be somehow placed in this. But it's all about aesthetics. It is all about prestige. It is also how it looks like. And that's how it was green roof seen for a long time. We entered in this business for a very simple reason. There is a big horticulture business in Netherlands where all the tomatoes, cucumbers, and everything is growing on the rock mineral wool, and where we're replacing the soil. Here, on the green roofs, there is around each square meter means 100 kilos or even more of soil. And in 2009, our plants were empty because of the crisis, so we were thinking how to bring some more business, and we saw this as a great opportunity. So we say, okay, we can replace this with something light, easy, holding a lot of water. It can be a good business. We can be cheaper than those guys, and that's it. And but things changed further. More we were in this business, more we were exploring what the green roofs can mean. We figured out that the green roofs are much more than just a nice green place on the roof where you can be proud and show this to your neighbors or the guys who are looking at it from you. It's a big tool for storm water management. It's actually a really huge tool which can solve a lot of problems in storm water management. It can reduce the heat island effects, CO2 footprint reduction. It's air cleaning tool. It can help a lot with the thermal performance, saving energy. It's creating a new natural habitats in the cities where the habitats were destroyed. It brings natural look, improve the comfort of living, extend roof lifetime, and it's at the end sound isolation. So it's a lot of technical aspects which this green roof is bringing besides just an aesthetic effect. But when you move in this direction, you figure out that it's not just like how to make things green and bring some kilograms of soil on the roof, but it's becoming much more scientific. So I think we are spending now 10 years studying these green roofs, the impacts, how this different design of roof can impact different things, which I spoke before, and we figure out it's a lot about of design, and it's not so easy to design this if you don't understand everything what runs behind the parameters we try to influence. Storm water retention and detention. It's becoming a big problem. I think in New York, nobody was thinking about this until the Sandy came and the whole New York was flooded, and suddenly everybody started speaking about these things. We were just this year in Washington. They had in 6 weeks so much rain that their wastewater treatment plant had to release the water directly into the river 6 times. It means all these, I would say, not cubic meters, but cubic kilometers of the waste went down the river. And you can imagine maybe Washington will still survive without any impacts, but this shit should end somewhere. And it ends in the oceans, it ends in the fields, it ends all down the stream. And if this water can be held for the later when it's needed, because then later they had a month of almost a dry season, this would be a great thing. And this is something what the green roofs can do, but only if they are properly designed. And if you think that today's solutions are huge tanks in the cellars, or we heard about some huge tanks. They built even a double walls on the skyscrapers so that they can fill them with the water when there is a raining. You can imagine how much cost and how much waste of everything, energy, resources is this to build these kind of things. A simple green roof can eliminate all these kind of needs because it can hold the water long enough that the problem is going away. Of course, a lot of modeling, a lot of testing, a lot of understanding, a lot of big data, a lot of digitalization involved in this to understand and be able to design the proper type of roof. Thermal performance, by evaporating the water, the roofs are cooling down the space. And during the summer, you can save a lot of energy. We see that there is air conditioning units can save up to 40% if they are properly combined with the green roofs. So it's also a quite good tool for energy, for thermal performance. Heat island effects, we know that cities are 5 to 7 degrees more warmer than the land around them. And all these kind of things can be reduced by having more green surfaces in the cities. Just simple example, the black roof during the summer means 80 degrees, so probably you can bake the egg there. With the green roof, you never have more than 35. So on grass, there is never more than 35 degrees on the top. And this brings another effect. Cooling systems, if you have your air conditioning placed on the black roof, where there is 80 degrees of the air around you, it means this cooling system is not working properly. So every degree decreased, it's improving the air conditioning system efficiency for 2%. The same with solar panels. You can increase the production or bring back to the normal level for you can save up to 18% of the production capacity of solar panels by putting them on the green surface because the temperature is so much lower and the cells are working better. So this is something what I would say from our simple green roof, where we try just to replace some kilograms of soil. We created a huge package of digital tools which help now architects and engineers to design the proper roofs for the problem they will try to solve. And what we try to solve is, I don't know, from the countries where they have too much water and the problems with the flooding, we are bringing the green into the countries where there is no green. So we are proud that the big opera house in Dubai and under the Burj Khalifa is using our system. So we are also used there to reduce the consumption of the water. We are used in the places where they want to keep their cities green and try to avoid the heat island effects, like countries like Singapore, and so on. So a lot of these things are happening. But of course, it's always, you have to study. It's not just simple. It's not just a simple solution. It's look at the beginning. It became a very complex thing where you really precisely define and design a solution for the people who are looking for them. And that requires a lot of stormwater laboratories. We are able to simulate all the conditions more or less on the globe in our laboratories. We try to see, say, from the thunderstorms to the normal rain. And all these kind of things you collect, and slowly you build the proper designs. So we started with very simple design of the roof. We started with one, I would call it in technical terms, SKU. And now we are ending with more than 50 different designs depending on what people want and what the people need. And if you're looking now, just bringing this back to the business perspective, there is 140 million square meters of the green roofs. Green roofs, these things can be also present on the green walls. Green walls are probably 3 times of this size. That is our business marketplace, which means it's probably around 20 billion market, which is today more or less untapped, untouched, or very small portion of it. And on the other side, beside the big business opportunity, there is also big environmental impact. If you look, if all these things, all the water which will fall on these 140 square meters would be kept, you would save probably just by no need of cleaning this water in the water cleaning devices, you would save 42,000 million megawatt hours of energy, which is around close to 40 small nuclear power plants. 28,000 tons of dust particles can be captured on those roofs, or 2 million tons of CO2 can be collected. So a lot of stuff can be done. Besides making money, you can do also a lot of good for the environment. That is from our side. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. Again, a wonderful expose of the opportunity, the business opportunity, as well as the environmental for us together, as well as obviously for your company. So I promised the panelists before we began that I'd give them an opportunity to put a comment or a question to another panelist in case you want to do that. And I'd like to ensure that if anyone here would like to also make a comment or put a question, you have the opportunity to do so. So anyone who would like to do that, if you want to make a signal to me, I can make sure that you have an opportunity. Otherwise, I will ask a couple of questions here. We have one person there. Maybe we'll turn straight to you, and I'll save my questions until we run out of time. But
Okay.
If you could just briefly introduce yourself and keep your question relatively short, that would be great.
Will do. Hi, my name is Andy Handvodopivec. I'm a Brit living in Slovenia. I have one question for the gentleman from Toyota. Your R&D and product development, commendable, super. My question is, what do you intend and how do you plan to, A, recycle your batteries after they're used up and need to be changed? Can you recycle them? And what will you do to dispose of them? Because no one seems to actually address this question, and I've never had a clear answer from any manufacturer. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. Actually, we are very not only committed, but eager to collect all the batteries back because we see a big purpose in these batteries. First of all, majority of our hybrid cars are not powered with lithium-ion batteries, but with nickel metal hydride batteries, which can be recyclable, but we see even bigger value in repurposing the batteries. Either refeed them, that we can reinstall them into vehicles, or repurpose them like storage units. Same goes to lithium-ion, which is not so good for recycling, however, can be repurposed and reused. And our target, we cannot achieve it due to certain reasons, but our target is to collect 100% of our batteries. We believe there is a big business to be done out of it. And just one more comment. We give 10 years warranty on our batteries, and I can say not many are coming back at the moment.
Very good. Any other questions before I use my chair's privilege and put some myself? Well, I think what we heard from those who are working in business or like I said, at the sort of delivery end of this, is the opportunity. But I'd be very interested how we link that to the challenges that we also heard about the need for faster innovation, changing business models, and what you would need, whether you're running a large car company, as we currently call it, to change to a mobility service provider, as Janusz suggested, or to move to a company that moves from providing a green roof to a service to the people living in or renting that house. So maybe if we can run across, maybe from Rock first, and we'll take the three of you after that, what would you see as necessary to help you make that type of shift so that the opportunities are ones that you realize as well as offer the public benefit as well? Rock.
About related to legislation and policy making?
Yes, but also the cultural point. What would be important from a consumer perspective that you would need to see?
Yeah, of course it's challenging because we have the technology developing fast, and in terms of consumer, in terms of our habits, how we use the energy, how we adopt the technology, certainly it requests certain changes in how we adopt it. It's related to social culture changes related to the change of our habits in our daily life. So we will need to change ourselves to really live with the new technology, live smarter way to be smarter, to be more efficient. And of course, this is a challenge. We need to educate, we need to promote, we need to, in a business, we need to sell these things. We need to push them. We need to do a lot of pilot projects for the promotion. So it's a challenge, in fact, and this is some task that we need to do in the future.
Okay, thank you. Well, maybe we'll come back to the policy side in a second, but the same question to you, Tom.
Yeah, I personally believe that people are changing their way they look at things, and they will change. But when it goes to the mobility or the car usage, there are mainly three aspects how they decide. It's It's number one is the convenience, then is the cost, and then is regulation. For example, if the city is closed for combustion engine cars or diesel cars, they will need to change. And even more than 80% of people choose a certain model to take hybrid car. When it goes to electric car, it's already a question of infrastructure and convenience. And of course, let's not forget the cost as well.
Absolutely, that always plays a role. Anna, I guess the question that struck me listening to what you were saying was, how would you scale the type of approach you have so that it's adopted more widely? If it, how does that happen?
I'm not very technical, I'm sorry. So I honestly think that what I said before, and I don't know, it has been really heard, not generalizing problems, but looking into micro problems of every micro region. I'll give you a very strong example of the Socha Valley, for example. So we all are screaming now, we have to become vegetarians to save the planet. But, you know, the ambience of Socha Valley is, Jesus, a zoo, a walking zoo of wild animals. My father, as a hunter, he is one of the hunters who are trying to save the ambience. He's saying, like, completely angry on European and Slovenian legislations, which are not trying to balance the wildlife, in particular the Socha Valley. So we do have access to the food. We do it, but because of generalizing the problems, we actually cannot reach it. So, you know, let's say only the hunting of the roebuck and deer is Jesus open only for 2 months per year, while we are actually having the access to the food which is available and which would actually help balance the natural life outside to the farmers, but also to the animal world itself. That's just, let's say, a little example. I'm also sometimes thinking, you know, it's, for me, the infrastructure and the education is absolutely missing. I'm saying education, if I can be a role model through the way I cook and through the way I also cook in a family, respecting the territory, respecting the season, which is the biggest problem probably, because the greenhouses are a big problem in the world. But when you teach a child that he needs to eat tomato 12 months per year, you do not help a planet to be saved. So it all starts in a families. I believe chefs and restaurants can be role models, each in its own environment, because one of my best chef friends, Virgilio Martinez from Peru, he is building, I would say, a huge story about understanding the biodiversity of Peru to the whole world. And today we speak about Peru as one of the not only food destinations, but also examples how to treat the sources that are hidden somewhere without destroying the planet. And I think there should be the way we enter more to the houses of people, to the families, and because it all starts there, and then at schools, and then at hospitals. And what I heard before, I think institutions have the responsibility. They should not be blind. They should see us, and they should see what's going on, actually.
Okay, thank you. So if you're from an institution, take note, please. Thank you.
I'm very loud about that, don't worry.
Sasha, your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, from our side, we can always say, yeah, we need more subsidies and better regulations from the state. That's the easy thing. But the way we went for is we rather walk around and try to share our experience and our knowledge, which I think is a big one. We accumulate a lot of knowledge during these years, working in energy efficiency sector, and we're trying to share this and walk around our public affairs people, working with more or less all the governments around the world, And our salespeople try to educate architects and everybody to follow the path. And I would say a good example is the last thing on the green roofs in Australia. We were trying to get there for 3 years with no interest of anybody really on the green roofs. They say, oh, we are a country, no need, which green enough, a lot of space, nothing. After the last floodings in Sydney, so the government suddenly decided, the local municipality decided, yeah, we need to do something about this. So they put legislation, you have to store the water, 70% of the water which falls down, you have to store it on the surface. And suddenly you are not able to get any permission if you don't do anything about this. We were holding last time, during the beginning of June, a conference on the green roofs. So we're just trying to show people what are the options. We offered 100 seats, and it was overbooked 3 times. And before that, we were not able to get any attraction. So if governments make these kind of smart moves to push people for the solutions which are today available, and maybe they were not available so many years ago, that can help us a lot, especially by motivating people at least to come.
Yeah. Great, very good practical example there as well. I'm conscious we're running up against the clock, but I want to give you a chance, maybe Janusz, to give a reflection on what you've heard, and then maybe the final word to you, Gregor. Janusz?
Just quickly, 3 comments on the things which were shared. The first one is the last one which was mentioned on subsidies and the better regulation. I fully agree with you. In essence, I have never understood why the public, those who are dealing with the public policy cannot really decide to reshift the subsidies. Because I know the data, they are 2 years old, published by the OECD for their countries. And for 2 years ago, it was still valid that fossil fuel subsidies from the year 2000, I think it was 2014, were growing faster than the growth in those countries. And all those countries are, by the way, sitting at the table and discussing the climate change plans and targets and so on. It's hypocrisy par excellence. So if we don't move that kind of behavior, we really have a problem. That's the first one. The second one is on, and I agree with everything what you were saying, and there is no problem with that. The only thing is that the fact is that food chain and land management are 2 major problems in dealing with the climate change. And absolutely going vegetarian, I think it's not the right way. But that we are in Europe, according to health standards, consuming too much red meat, that we have the serious problem with methane release in Europe. These are the serious problem because farmers never wanted really, I can tell you that because I was proposing that part of legislation and it didn't went through council and parliament, that the methane would be also part of the air things which we would actually commit countries that they would follow. And there is one simple rule which I would like that everybody understands. Farmers will be first and are first actually hit by the climate change. But you cannot be member of society only when you need help. You have to be member of society when you have to contribute to the solutions too. And that's where we need to find the proper balance. And the third issue is...
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but like you remember when during my explanation I explained, if you look to the traditions, look back, the way people were feeding themselves.
Anna, that was not discussing with you.
Yeah. No,
I
but it's
everything.
true because it's exactly what I wanted to say.
I think it's going that it's the right way to go. I think it's absolutely the right way. Looking to the problems locally, it's the right way to go. So I subscribe to that issues. I'm just telling you about the issues which are global problem on the EU level about agriculture today and about the common agriculture policy, which is not at all helping, that we would really change the food and the agricultural system to the better. It's more freezing what we have than actually helping the transition which is needed. And the third issue is the issue which actually was touched in the first by Tom on the... So the thing on which we would like to, and I'm on one of those projects currently working, it's really go with so-called extended producer responsibility as deep as possible. Because currently the legislation is not delivering as it should. Society currently, I'm a bit simplifying, it's working like that. Producer is responsible for the product until it's produced, consumer until it's consumed, and then when it's becoming the waste, it's more or less the society. How the society is then organizing it and again activating the private interest and what, it's of course the case. But if we would have, if for example, you would know that, and you are going exactly in that direction, that all the producers would know that they would get, when their products will be out of use, that they will get them back, believe me, they would design them differently. So we really have to start thinking how we can influence, stimulate, incentivize that those systems would move without a serious pressure coming from public authorities, but that the system itself would have the incentives to deliver. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So the final word, I think, Gregor.
Thank you. I think I will just continue where Johannes ended. And I think that the first and the most important step should be made, from the we need to change towards I want to change. And not only because it's better for the world, but because it's better for me. And if I have a look on the panelists, we all changed our business models, our way of doing things, because we wanted to do this, because we wanted to participate more. And I think that this, from we need to change, I want to change. And that's my closing remark. Thank you.
Wonderful. I think that's a great way to finish. I hope, just 1 second, I'd like to personally and on your behalf thank all of the panelists before we wrap up. Thank you all for having attended, and obviously I hope you have found some of this stimulating, given you food for thought. It's certainly given me an appetite listening to you. And I hope that you'll come back and stay engaged in this discussion. I think for this meeting, not just today, but generally sustainability issues like this are absolutely central, as we've all heard. And I wish you all, therefore, bonne continuation, as they often say in Brussels. And I encourage you to thank our various panelists here on our behalf. So thank you to all of you.